Hello, I'm Gavin Jackson, and welcome to South Carolina ETV and South Carolina Public Radio's live broadcast of Governor Nikki Haley's 2017 State of the State Address. In just a few moments, Governor Haley will be addressing lawmakers for the final time, with just days to go until she becomes the next U.S. ambassador to the United Nations. In Haley's speech tonight, she's expected to recap her past 6 years of accomplishments and difficulties. She's also expected to talk about remaining priorities that lawmakers should be following this upcoming legislative session, including better roads funding and better education funding as well. Lawmakers will have an additional $450 million to spend this year, but difficult budget decisions will still remain. Meanwhile, the priorities of her successor, Lieutenant Governor Henry McMaster, remain unknown. McMaster will bring a different governing style to the State House once Haley is confirmed by the U.S. Senate, which could come later this month. Now we go live to Governor Haley, who is entering the House chamber.
Thank you. Oh, I didn't see.
Receive Her Excellency, the Governor, and her distinguished escort committee.
Governor Haley is now entering the House chamber with her escort committee and greeting fellow lawmakers as she comes in. It's her final State of the State address here in South Carolina, as expected. Like I said earlier, she is going to be having hearings in the U.S. Senate next week, next Wednesday actually, which is why we moved up the State of the State address. It's expected to be a shorter speech this evening. Governor Haley gives speeches around 30 minutes to 45 minutes. We're thinking it might be a little bit shorter again on the 30-minute mark. Taking selfies right there. I think that's Representative Cesar McKnight from Williamsburg County. Everyone really wanted to see her for one last time, as after this she will be off to Washington, then obviously New York. Last year, Governor Haley actually said the State of the State was bent but not broken. She was obviously talking about a lot of the difficulties that the state faced in 2015, including the shooting of Walter Scott, the massacre at Emmanuel AME Church in Charleston, and the devastating flood that hit the state last October. She's expected to talk about similar things such as Hurricane Matthew and the recovery efforts after that devastating natural disaster that hit the state also last October. She's now making her way up to the dais for her final speech to South Carolina lawmakers in South Carolina. She's greeting who is going to be her successor, Lieutenant Governor Henry McMaster. Hello, Governor. And House Speaker Jay Lucas. She's still waiting. A couple more introductions up there on the dais. Looks like there'll be a brief introduction right now with Lieutenant Governor McMaster. Still getting some people arranged up there, it looks like.
Please be. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen of the Joint Assembly and honored guests, I'm proud to present to you the Honorable Nikki Haley, Governor of South Carolina.
everyone. Thank you. Mr. Speaker, Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen of the General Assembly, constitutional officers, and my fellow South Carolinians. Tonight marks the 7th time I have stood behind this podium to discuss the state of our state. The first 5 of those evenings began with the recognition of at least one member of the United States Armed Forces who had perished in the year prior. By the grace of God, for the 2nd year in a row, I will not read a single name of a lost soldier, sailor, airman, or Marine. But the men and women of our military are not alone in their willingness to sacrifice for us and in their dedication to keeping us safe. So now please join me as we pay tribute to those who gave the last full measure of devotion in the service of South Carolina and her people. Officer Alan Lee Jacobs, Greenville. Firefighter Christopher Jean Ray, Green Sea. On behalf of all South Carolinians, to their families, know we will never forget. Monday night was a great night in South Carolina. If I wasn't a proud governor already, our Clemson Tigers winning the national championship took it to a whole new level. Driving to the State House and raising that orange flag over the Capitol Dome with my daughter Rena is a memory I will treasure forever. Congratulations to Coach Dabo, his staff, and every Clemson player. Enjoy this moment. You earned it. Clemson is more than just a special place because of our football team. It is also where I met Michael, my very first weekend there. In the 27 years since, we have grown up together. On this roller coaster of life, I have more love and appreciation for him with each passing day, inspiring me in the good times, encouraging me through the tough times, and being a rock for me in the saddest of times. I can't imagine going through this next adventure without his support. I'm a lucky girl. Please help me welcome and thank the coolest first man, Michael Haley. I am blessed tonight to have many family members here who have supported us through the last 6 years. It's not easy being related to a public official, or at least not to this one, but they never complain, and I love them for that. Missing tonight are my 2 little ones, although I guess they aren't so little anymore. Rena, now 18, started her first day of classes of her spring semester today. Naylan, now 15, is getting used to his new school in New York. It's hard to look at the balcony and not see their sweet faces. Michael and I are so proud of both of them, and I know they're watching. I love you both very much. There's a special group of people sitting in the balcony tonight. They usually stay behind the scenes, watching in what we call the pit in our office downstairs. They are familiar faces to many of you, but to me, they're my second family. My chiefs of staff over the years and the rest of Team Haley are among the most talented, hardworking people I have ever met. They sacrificed and worked with servant hearts every day to lift up and improve our state. To my team, past and present, know that the impact of your work will be felt for generations. Your sacrifice will never be forgotten. Your future is bright. Thank you for your friendship and sharing the love of our state with me. Please stand and let the state thank you for your service. To my friend, Henry McMaster. I don't know about you, but it has been funny for me to read the media's recent comparisons of the two of us, of how they think we're similar and where they think we might be different. Sometimes they're right, sometimes they're wrong. And so for clarity's sake, here are two things I know for certain we have always shared: a love of South Carolina and a love of music. Your love of South Carolina gives me great comfort, and as I know, you cherish our state and its people, and I know you'll take care of them. Your love of music makes me think that any advice would be better received if it came from a favorite of mine, Joan Jett. Quote, "Just be yourself, and everything will fall in line, the way it's supposed to be. Live an authentic life, and you don't have to worry about your reputation." There is wisdom in her words, and if your time as governor is anything like mine, they will serve you well. Ladies and gentlemen, the state of our state is blessed. Unsurprisingly, the last few weeks have been a time of great reflection for me. When I walked into the State House this morning, it struck me that I have been doing this for 12 years. What a road we've traveled together. There have been good days and been trying ones. There have been wins and losses, progress and setbacks, joys and frustration. There have been times of great celebration and those of deep, devastating mourning. As I have thought back on it all, one thing has become so clear to me. Serving as governor of the state of South Carolina is the greatest honor of my life. When I was first elected, I heard over and again from governors around the country that this would be the best job I've ever had. I didn't understand what they meant back then, and if I'm honest, some days, especially during legislative session, I didn't agree with them. I understand it now, because they were right. They were absolutely right. But they weren't right for the reasons some might think. No, the true delight of this job comes not from the influence or the pageantry of the office that I hold, but from the people that I serve. It is difficult for me to put into words the way I feel about the citizens of this state. You are the strength of South Carolina, and so too have you been my strength. 6 years ago, you took a chance on me. I have spent each day since working to prove to you that you made the right decision. Know that I will continue to do so every single day, no matter where I go or what I do. When addressing the American people for the final time as president, Ronald Reagan had this to say about his experience in that office. Quote, "One of the things about the presidency is that you're always somewhat apart. You spend a lot of time going by too fast in a car someone else is driving and seeing the people through tinted glass, the parents holding up a child, and the wave you saw too late and couldn't return. While I've spent a lot of times these last 6 years going by too fast in a car someone else is driving, I have never felt apart from the people of South Carolina. I have no evidence to back this up, but I have always had the feeling that I spent more time outside of Columbia than most of my predecessors. Often it was out of necessity, celebrating a new company, speaking at a graduation, laying eyes on the aftermath of a flood or a storm. But often it wasn't. Often it was for me. The school visits with those sweet children full of innocence and optimism. The church services sharing peace and faith with old friends and new. The county days watching neighbors helping neighbors. This is what kept me going. No matter what was taking place, no matter what challenges we were facing, if I could get out with the people, if I could see and feel the true goodness that is so deeply ingrained in the fabric of this state, I was regenerated. G.K. Chesterton, the English writer, defined gratitude as happiness doubled with wonder. I am so grateful for the kindness, the compassion, the trust, and the friendship the citizens of South Carolina have shown to me and my family. Thank you for being an important part of our lives and allowing us to be a part of yours. It has been an interesting process to think back on where we started in 2011 and where we are today. Each year brought new challenges, and with that, new priorities. But behind each and everything we did was the underlying goal to better the image of South Carolina. When I first ran for governor, I often heard people speaking negatively about our state, both here at home and around the country. Those were difficult words to hear. This was the state that adopted my parents, the state that raised me. I knew what we had in us. I knew the potential was there for us to be a force across the region, the nation, and the world. When we first asked public servants to answer the phone with state agencies with, "It's a great day in South Carolina, how may I help you?" they hated it. But it wasn't just some off-the-wall catchphrase, born of some hidden desire to make things more difficult. It had a purpose. Two, in fact. First, it was to remind our public servants that they worked for the person on the other side of the phone, and that they were there, above all, to answer whatever question or solve whatever problem might come up. Second, South Carolina was never the state it was portrayed to be. We are so much more than the punchline of a late-night joke. We always have been. It was time for the rest of the country and the rest of the world to see South Carolina as she truly is, a state of unlimited potential, unrivaled beauty, populated by good, faithful, hardworking people. The kind of place with the kind of people where every day can be great. So in spite of the pushback, we kept saying it. People kept hearing it. And then they started saying it too. Now the first thing I hear wherever I go and speak, it's almost always, "It's a great day in South Carolina." And they're right, because it almost always is. That doesn't mean things have been easy. In 2011, we were in the heart of the Great Recession. At the end of my first month as governor, our unemployment rate stood at 11.1%. Jobs were scarce. Economic anxiety was real. People were hurting. State government was, too. The struggling economy meant revenues were down. Years of spending more than we should had caught up with us. Our budget had massive holes. The federal money we had relied on was drying up. 3 agencies were staring at multi-million-dollar mid-year deficits. I remember not quite knowing where to start. And then I came across a quote from Governor Carol Campbell. I know you've heard this before, maybe even from this podium during this speech, but it bears repeating because it is the core of what has driven this administration from the very beginning. Governor Campbell said, "If you can find a person a job, you can take care of a family." We have taken care of a lot of families over the last 6 years. And the most important word in that sentence is we. Bobby Hitt and I have received a lot of credit for the economic revival that has transpired in South Carolina. And while it's nice that people appreciate our work, this is so much more than him or me or any other single person. The only chance we had to come through the downturn was if the state banded together. The challenge we faced was simply too large for us to confront in any other way. Commerce, the economic development alliances, local and county leadership, Ready SC, DO, our technical schools, the business community, the good people of our state. None of the successes we have celebrated would have been possible if all of these parties were not pulling in the same direction. That meant breaking from the traditional regionalism of the past and embracing the idea that we were one South Carolina. It meant understanding that a win for the upstate was a win for the low country. A win for the PD was a win for the Midlands. It meant committing fully to no longer competing against each other, but presenting a united front, a team South Carolina that actually meant something. The old way of thinking died, and then magic happened. We have announced 85,613 jobs. We have celebrated 672 projects, more than half of which were expansions. We have seen $21.5 billion in capital investment in the state. Our unemployment rate is now 4.4%. Every single one of our 46 counties has seen new jobs. Every one. Team South Carolina is a very real thing, and it is no wonder that they now call us, which I love, the Beast of the Southeast. When I travel out of state, I'm often asked about the change that has taken place in South Carolina, as if there is some secret formula to our successes. My answer is that, like most things in government, it's not as complicated as people think. What we have accomplished in South Carolina has not been rocket science. It has been about common sense, a belief that all things are possible if you free people to pursue their dreams, and a willingness to get creative and challenge norms. That is certainly true when it comes to job creation and economic development. But the last 6 years have proven it true elsewhere as well. For as long as I can remember, our public schools have not been good enough. That is no secret to anyone inside or outside this chamber. We simply haven't done enough to prepare South Carolina's children for the future. This is a problem on a number of levels. The first is practical. With South Carolina's economy booming and new jobs springing up all across the state, we have to be able to produce a workforce that can fill them. If we don't, if companies cannot find the talent they need to be successful in South Carolina, they will go somewhere that they can. The second is moral. Every South Carolina child deserves a quality education, regardless of where he or she is born and raised, regardless of who or his or her parents are, and regardless of what they do. And as the elected leadership of state, it is our obligation to give it to them. We failed that obligation for too long. It wasn't for lack of trying or because we didn't recognize the scope of the problem. But sometimes in government, a challenge can seem so daunting that we make the solutions far more complex than they need to be. A lesson I learned through the course of the education conversation we started a few years ago. In truth, much of the dysfunction in our public school system was caused by simple problems with clear solutions. Our funding formula was outdated and complicated and didn't address the needs of the children who most require the resources we can provide. So we changed it to account for things like poverty and gifted and talented students. Too many of our kids were leaving the 3rd grade without being able to read. So we made it mandatory that they be held back if they couldn't, and provided reading coaches to make sure that they could. Schools in rural and high poverty areas couldn't afford the technology necessary for a 21st century education, so we found a way to provide it to them. Those same school districts struggle to recruit new teachers and to keep the ones they have. So we incentivized our educators to sign up with those schools, and when they do, to stay. None of this is to suggest that we have fixed everything that ails our public education system. There is still much to be done. Making the superintendent of education a position appointed by the governor is a good example. But we brought fundamental change to a system that desperately needed it. We did so quickly and without acrimony. And we made genuine progress towards delivering every South Carolina child the education he or she deserves. That is worth celebrating. My hope is that in working together, we have established a blueprint for successful education reform, one that will allow that progress and those celebrations continue. Throughout my time in public life, I have spoken often about my parents. It's not just because I love them, which of course I do, or just because I'm proud of them, which of course I am, but because the lessons they taught me, I carry each and every day. One such lesson came from my mom, whose constant mantra was this: whatever you do, be great at it and make sure people remember you for it. I don't presume to know what people will remember from my time as governor. I imagine it will be different for everyone. But I do know some of what I will take from the last 6 years, some of what I will remember. I will remember that we brought a level of accountability to state government that never existed before, and that legislators now show their votes on the record, disclose who pays them, and no longer police themselves. I will remember that we changed the structure of a state government that was antiquated and broken, and that future governors will choose their running mate, their adjutant general, and have the full benefit of the Department of Administration that drives responsibility, efficiency, and better service to our citizens. I will remember the willingness of the people in this room to step into someone else's shoes, find genuine understanding, remove a divisive symbol of an oppressive past, and move South Carolina forward. I will remember that we got our fiscal house in order, and that during my time in office, no cabinet agency ran a deficit, all while we cut taxes, doubled our reserves, and reduced our debt service by half. I will remember that we saved the Heritage Golf Tournament, and that we did it without a single taxpayer dollar. I will remember that we acknowledged South Carolina's shameful history on domestic violence and gave voice to its survivors. I will remember that we moved thousands from welfare to work and started preparing prisoners for life outside the fence, in the hope that they never again find themselves inside it. I will remember that I was gifted the most talented, most dedicated cabinet a governor could hope for, and that nothing we accomplished would have been possible without them. I will remember the devastating fire in Georgetown, the 2 winter storms, the shooting of an unarmed man by a North Charleston police officer, the hate-filled atrocity committed against 12 faithful men and women in the most sacred of places, the 1,000-year flood, the loss of a precious child to a school shooting, and Hurricane Matthew. But above all, I will remember how the good people of South Carolina responded to those tragedies with love and generosity and compassion, and what that has meant for our state. I spoke earlier of my dear desire to see the image of South Carolina changed for the better. Standing here tonight, I can say with every confidence that it has happened, that that desire has been fulfilled, but not because of me. the people of South Carolina accomplished the highest aspiration I had for our state, all on their own. They did it by showing the entire world what love and acceptance looks like. They did it by displaying for all to see the power of faith, of kindness, and of forgiveness. They did it by stepping up to every challenge, through every tragedy, every time. And in so doing, the people of South Carolina changed our image in a way no piece of legislation or shift in policy or job announcement could have ever accomplished. What a blessing to serve such people. What a profound blessing. Thank you for giving our family this opportunity. Because of you, South Carolina will always be our home. It is a bittersweet thing taking on this new challenge, moving on from the state that I so love, called to serve this nation I hold so dear. When the bitter gets a little too strong for the sweet, I try to think of the children's author, A.A. Milne, whose lovable character, Winnie the Pooh, so elegantly put it. How lucky I am to have something that makes saying goodbye so hard. And goodbye this is, for now. But I will always have one eye on South Carolina, and South Carolina will always be with me. As I move into this new capacity, it is the lessons I learned from this state and its people, starting all the way back when I was a young Indian girl in small rural Bamberg who spent her time playing tennis and dreaming big, that I will take with me. Faith, hard work, respect, love of family, love of country. These are the values that South Carolina has gifted to me. I will forever hold them close. Don't forget about us. We're not going far. And we're already looking forward to coming home to the state we love so deeply. Thank you. God bless you, and may it always be a great day in South Carolina.
I don't think you can stop them. No, I don't think so.
Members of the Joint Assembly will please remain standing as Her Excellency, the Governor, and her distinguished party depart the Joint Assembly.
And you just heard Governor Nikki Haley's final State of the State address here in the South Carolina State House. Now we go to the Democratic response from Senator Thomas McElveen of Sumter.
Good evening and Happy New Year to all of my fellow South Carolinians. Tonight, as we begin a new year and a new session for our state government, we find ourselves in a different posture than after previous State of the State addresses. The unpredictable winds of change that are buffeting our country are also ushering in changes right here in South Carolina. As we welcome the new legislators who are already working with us now that we have kicked off a new session in the General Assembly, we also anticipate that we will soon have a new administration moving into the governor's office. We South Carolinians thank Governor Haley for her service to our state, and extend our best wishes as she awaits confirmation in her new role as the United States Permanent Representative to the United Nations. In these uncertain times and in a world with a great deal of instability, she will assume a critical role in the cabinet of the President-elect. She will have the prayers of the people of her home state as she undertakes this important job. As Governor Haley departs and our governor in waiting prepares to take office, tonight we Democrats offer a very simple charge. We know all too well what needs to be done in South Carolina to ensure future prosperity and competitiveness in a global economy. We know what our responsibilities are to the working men and women of this state, to their families, and to the next generation of South Carolinians. For too long, we have failed to summon the will and the courage to work together to turn our challenges into opportunities by fixing what's broken in our state. The people of our state deserve branches of government that are committed to working together to make everyday challenges easier for everyday South Carolinians. It's time for all of us to put those folks first, before partisan rhetoric, before partisan politics, before partisan bickering, and before self-preservation. It's time for us to do what's right and to do it with a sense of urgency that our leaders have failed to execute for well over a decade. First and foremost, the people of South Carolina demand honesty and integrity from the public officials who have been given the public's trust to solve our biggest challenges and to move this state in the right direction. What they don't deserve is a cloud of corruption charges in far too many instances where public trust has been violated in exchange for personal gain among the people who are charged with running this state. It's a cloud that we must shake in order to restore the people's trust in our state government. I'm State Senator Thomas McElveen from Sumter, South Carolina, and I'm a Democrat who's frustrated with not only the way business is being done in Washington, but also right here in Columbia. I'm a Democrat who believes that trustworthy service and real solutions to our challenges come only when state leaders put partisan labels aside and work together to deliver solid results. And I'm here to tell you that if we want a strong show of good faith to our fellow South Carolinians in 2017, there is no better option than to immediately work in a bipartisan manner to solve the biggest long-term problem that we currently face. Since before I joined the state Senate, it's been the proverbial elephant in the room. It's the issue that everyone is aware of, but also the task that's been long ignored and denied the attention and the effort that it demands. It's our failing transportation system, our crumbling roads and bridges that worsen with each day of inaction in Columbia. South Carolina spends less per mile on state road maintenance than any other state in the country, and it's become painfully obvious to just about anyone that we are getting exactly what we pay for. We must solve this problem in a manner that not only restores the highways and roads that lead to our larger cities and urban areas, but in a way that also lends the same support to the rural communities throughout South Carolina, and we need to start right now. You don't have to be a genius to figure out that the longer a problem goes ignored, the more difficult and expensive it becomes to fix. Think about a leaking roof on your house. That's the best example I can think of to remind my Republican friends that there is nothing conservative about putting off deferred maintenance. Repairing a leaking roof today is a much less expensive fix than the damage to your house, which will occur when the problem is put off and the repairs are delayed year after year after year as wood rots and floors, furniture, and everything in between become damaged. The same is true of South Carolina roadways in all parts of our state. And that's where we find ourselves today, and the problem will only grow worse until it's adequately addressed. It's time for our legislators and our soon-to-be new governor to zero in on a plan that will include a stream of revenue that's exclusively dedicated to restoring, improving, and maintaining our infrastructure so that our roads will be safe and so that South Carolina will remain a place that's competitive with our neighboring states and a state where people want to do business. Our reputation as a wonderful place to do business will inevitably rise or fall in proportion to our willingness to take care of our infrastructure. Our reputation as the beast of the Southeast when it comes to economic development will erode right along with our roads if we do not take immediate steps to fix what we all know is a major problem. We must dedicate revenue to this task in a responsible way, without jeopardizing our commitment to other core obligations, such as the education of our children. It must be a realistic plan that protects these core obligations during the down years or in the event of another recession. We must always invest in ourselves if we expect others to do the same, and it is well established that infrastructure and education are the seed corn of economic development, growth, and prosperity for our citizens. Simply stated, you don't let your seed corn go bad. In recent years, we have worked together to create better educational outcomes for South Carolina children. Together, Democrats and Republicans have increased accessibility to 4-year-old kindergarten, especially to children whose opportunities have been limited due to limited resources. We know that our investment in 4K is making a monumental positive difference, but we have so much more to do. Our state Supreme Court ruled that we must come up with a more equitable manner of supporting public education so that a child living anywhere in South Carolina doesn't immediately find herself disadvantaged when it comes to access to educational opportunities just because of where she was born and raised. Much like our transportation system or the roof on your house, the problems we face with our educational system, from primary schools all the way up to our state colleges, universities, and technical schools, will grow worse if we do not provide them the support necessary for excellence. If we truly want to do right by our constituents, we cannot turn a blind eye to the state of public health here in South Carolina. As we all know, our state has rejected an opportunity to provide access to health care for approximately 300,000 working South Carolinians. Instead, our governor headed up a charge to send millions of our tax dollars to places like Arkansas, Kentucky, and even New York. In addition to increasing access to quality health care, those funds would have created thousands and thousands of jobs right here in South Carolina. Tragically, the refusal of these federal funds, which are actually tax dollars that our citizens sent to Washington, has resulted in rural hospitals and other health care facilities being shuttered across the state. As we have discovered way too many times over the past few decades, when our state government cuts off the nose to spite the face because of partisanship run wild, we do so at the expense and the peril of hardworking, everyday people, and that is morally wrong. South Carolina Democrats support a health care system that will allow people in every corner of the state not only to have access to treatment and to medical care for themselves and their loved ones, but also access to educational lifestyles conducive to healthier outcomes. We are also committed to our dedicated state employees who work hard and in many cases devote their entire careers to serving all of us who call South Carolina home. As lawmakers who are responsible for writing a state budget, we cannot be derelict in our duty to take care of those who make our state function. For too many years, the holes and cracks in our pension fund have become larger and larger because they have been completely ignored. We must articulate a fair and equitable solution to this pension dilemma so that the promises that were made to the men and women who work for the state of South Carolina can be kept without adding unfairly to the burden of those who in many cases have gone without the raises and cost of living adjustments that they deserve and need. We know the challenges we face in South Carolina, and history gives us the reassurance that we can easily overcome them when we work together. In only recent years, we have worked in unison to begin restoring credibility to failing state agencies such as the Department of Social Services. The work that we're doing there is creating safer situations for countless South Carolina children whose difficult circumstances have left them with no place to turn but the state. Our children are the most precious blessings that we have, and we must protect them. We have worked together to take this responsibility to protect the vulnerable a step further by passing stronger domestic violence laws in this state, laws which send a clear message that violence in the home will never be tolerated, no matter who the offender may be. Anyone who's familiar with South Carolina is aware of our bounty of precious natural resources and the pristine, beautiful places with which our state has been blessed. By working in a bipartisan manner to establish and support initiatives such as the State Conservation Bank, we have stood together and shown our commitment to protecting the beaches, mountains, lakes, woodlands, wetlands, rivers, and streams that God has given us for future generations to enjoy. In what has too often been a vitriolic political climate in our country, and even in our state at times, we have proven that we are capable of setting a different tone in South Carolina, and now we must continue in that same vein. We have achieved our greatest successes when we have worked together, and our greatest successes have come when we've had leadership focused on good results for our state combined with the will to collaborate. I believe that's what our fellow South Carolinians want, and it's what they deserve from us. The people that I talk to, Everyday people of different backgrounds and different situations in life are tired of watching the same old cans being kicked down the road due to partisan bickering and political grandstanding. People become frustrated and lose their faith in government when their priorities are ignored by those who control government. We have the ability to alleviate that frustration and to restore that faith if we choose to listen to each other, to respect each other's opinions, and to work together to fashion policies that work for all of our state. Fact is, in the end, both parties want many of the exact same things, but just doggedly hang on to their ideas of how to get there. I do not believe that any one person or political party has all of the answers. I believe that somewhere between what Democrats want and what Republicans want, we can find a better way to move forward together if our goal really is to solve problems and increase opportunity. Sure, we've had our great days in South Carolina, but we have the potential to truly deliver a better day to all South Carolinians. I am humbled and honored to serve the people of Sumter, Kershaw, Lee, and Richland counties in the South Carolina Senate. I remain proud to be a member of the South Carolina Senate and its Democratic caucus. Our party has consistently fought to bring common sense solutions to problems that affect all South Carolinians. Day in and day out, the record proves that our members fight for all South Carolinians, and we have delivered. We will continue to work, we will continue to deliver with the knowledge that we could do so much more if we would all show the same commitment and sense of urgency to tackle South Carolina's greatest challenges together. While we celebrate our past accomplishments, it's much more important now to focus on what we will do as we move forward. We have to believe that we can have a better day in South Carolina, and that we will. After all, our state motto is Dum Spiro Spero. While I breathe, I hope. Thank you, and God bless you all in our great state of South Carolina.
And you just heard from Senator Thomas McElveen with the Democratic response. Now we're here with several lawmakers, including Representative Terry Alexander from the Florence area. Representative Alexander, tell us what you thought of the governor's final State of the State tonight.
Well, I thought it was very inspiring. I think she kind of took us back down memory lane, telling us what was accomplished under her tenure here as governor, which I thought was a very good thing, reminding us where we were and where we are today. And I think that's always a good thing, basically.
And is it going to be odd now that Governor Haley's on her way out, now we're going to have a new governor, Governor McMaster?
Well, I think it's going to be an interesting, transition. We're going from Governor Haley to Governor McMaster. We're not exactly sure where he is on a lot of issues. So it's going to be an interesting dynamics, particularly here in South Carolina, when we come to the issues that are important to the people of South Carolina, like roads, like gas tax, public education or traditional public education and the like. So it's going to be interesting to see where he falls in this whole idea of moving South Carolina forward.
Well, great. It was good talking to Representative Alexander.
Thank you.
We'll see you later.
Thank you.
And we have Senator Peeler, former Majority Leader. How are you doing today, sir?
Doing great. How are you?
Good, good. What did you think of Governor Haley's final speech here?
Well, there's no such thing as a good goodbye. But as you know, I've been a loyal ally for Governor Haley in the state Senate, and it saddens me to see her move out of the governor's mansion. But I'm comforted in the fact that Governor McMaster will be moving in. He's a known quantity. There's no learning curve for him. What you see is what you get. But he's been at the seat of the political table in the state of South Carolina for a long, long time, and now he's at the head of the table. So it saddens me to see Governor Haley leave and her family leave, but I'm comforted in the fact that Governor McMaster will be taking the reins.
The governor just released her budget, some of her priorities for the year coming up. Obviously, she's not going to be here to implement those. Who's going to be maybe in charge of kind of pushing forward some of these priorities the year ahead, in your opinion?
Well, that'll be up to the new governor, I think.
And you expect that to be a smooth transition in the lieutenant governor position?
I do. There'll be no learning curve for him. He's been there, done that. He knows what to do.
And obviously with the Senate, we're still trying to figure out who's going to be the next lieutenant governor.
Well, that'll be an interesting thing when we come to that bridge.
Yeah, and we're almost there, so I guess we'll see what happens next. Thank you, Senator Peeler.
We can see it from here.
Thank you. Have a good night, sir.
Thank you.
Great. And we have Representative Caesar McKnight from Williamsville County. Good, sir. How are you doing?
I'm doing well.
Well, great. Well, tell us what your thoughts were on the governor's final State of the State this evening.
I thought the speech was a good speech. I was a little disheartened by the fact that she left out some key issues that I think are facing the state. In particular, she did not mention the pension shortfall that we have here in South Carolina, and I'm really bothered by that. As the child of someone who's a South Carolina employee who's going to rely on that pension, I'm comforted by the fact that my mom is approaching retirement age, and she won't miss the pension. However, someone coming into the system likely will end up not being able to benefit from that. And I think it's time for us to put our feet down collectively and decide what it is we're going to do to save our pension. This active managed fund that we have has just robbed our pension fund. We've paid $200+ million in fees to people who've managed our funds, and when you have states like Nevada who've paid $223 million less, their pensions have outperformed us. So we need some answers, and we need some changes, and we need them now. And I wish the governor would have addressed that. In particular, I wish he would have spoken more on the Abbeville issue, because my school district is one of the districts that was an Abbeville plaintiff. So I wish he'd have spoken more.
Representative McKnight, just kind of wrapping up, do you see that the pension fund issue being a bigger issue than roads and bridges this year, or is it the same?
It's not a bigger issue, but those are the two hallmark issues this year, roads and the pension fund.
Gotcha. Well, great. Good seeing you, sir. Appreciate it.
All right.
Representative John King, we got coming up here. Representative King, tell me a little bit about your thoughts on the governor's last State of the State this evening, what you heard and maybe what stood out to you tonight.
Well, I wish the governor would have addressed some issues that we're going to be faced with long after she's gone from South Carolina, such as the crumbling roads and bridges here in South Carolina, the Abbeville court decision that we're going to have to deal with in South Carolina, and the expansion of Medicaid in South Carolina for many of the South Carolinians who suffer and who don't have health insurance in South Carolina. I wish she would have addressed those issues for South Carolinians so that they would know what we need to do in South Carolina, how we will address those issues in South Carolina, as well as the pension plan that we have for our state employees. And so I was just concerned that none of those issues were addressed in her State of the State.
Well, and is that something that maybe you see leadership within the House or any other leaders in the State House coming up to make a priority in your opinion? Abbeville, for example, I mean, are we seeing any movement on where that might be going this year?
Well, as the chairman of the South Carolina Legislative Black Caucus, we will address those issues. So there will be leadership from us, from the South Carolina Legislative Black Caucus, and I would hope that the new governor of South Carolina will find that these are priorities that we need to address to better serve the citizens of South Carolina, to give them a better life here and a better standard of living in South Carolina, with issues such as Medicaid expansion, education, and the crumbling roads, so that we can have great infrastructure for economic development and different things like that here in South Carolina.
All right, thank you very much, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you so very much.
Great. We got Senate Majority Leader Shane Massey. How are you doing, sir?
Hey, man. How are you?
Good, good. Let me know. I got your orange on there. I see,
Absolutely.
obviously, Clemson.
Got to fly the colors.
And they were flying today over the State House Dome as well.
Absolutely.
Tell us a little bit about what you heard from the governor, obviously the leader of your party for a remaining couple days. What did you take away from that? How are you going to apply that this year in the State House?
I mean, I really thought it was a great speech. I mean, it seems like it was a thank you, a goodbye type speech, obviously. But look, Governor Haley has been a great cheerleader for the state. She's done a very good job during some difficult circumstances. She's brought some important issues to the forefront. But overall, if anything else, I think she helps us give confidence to ourselves, because lots of times that does seem to be an issue. We've got a great reputation around the country now, and I think a lot of that's attributable to Nikki Haley.
And Senator Massey, we know there's a lot of different big issues this year, the pension fund being one of them, roads and bridges always being one of them. We obviously didn't hear much direction from her on that. Where are we going to get this direction from? Are we going to hear it from our incoming Governor McMaster when he gets into office, or where do we see those priorities shaping up as we go forward this year?
Right, look, leadership matters, right? And we'll see if future Governor McMaster wants to weigh in on those things. I'm sure he will. But I think you'll also see some leadership out of the Senate on some of those things, and I know the House will do so as well. There are going to be some legislative leaders who are going to come forward and try to address some of those problems, because we owe it to South Carolina. That's our responsibility. It's the reason we're here. They sent us here to try to fix some problems. And so I think you're going to see some leadership on those issues.
When we talk about leadership, obviously outside of the State House, when we talk about the governor's role, how important, how much direction do these governors give behind the scenes perhaps that we don't usually see? I mean, is there a lot of direction, a lot of movement that they kind of come to you, or vice versa, and you guys kind of discuss what these priorities are? Or how big of a role, I should say, is Lieutenant Governor McMaster going to be going forward for y'all? Yeah,
I guess, each governor has his or her own personality, right? And so how involved they get depends on their own personality. Governor Haley obviously was very involved. She was very involved behind the scenes, but also publicly as well when she thought she needed to be. We'll see how Governor McMaster gets involved in things. He certainly has a lot of ideas. He's a smart guy. We'll see how he decides to play that. But Governor Haley was very involved on both privately and publicly. And you've got to do that in order to be effective, because it's important to have that bully pulpit.
Yeah.
It's important to try to shape policy. I mean, this is the person who's elected by the state, entire state, on policy issues. So I think Governor Haley did a good job. I think she's done a great job over the past 6 years, and I look forward to Governor McMaster.
Very good. Thank you, sir.
Awesome.
Good talking to you.
Thanks. Yep.
We got Representative Jerry Govan here. How you doing, sir? Good to see you.
Good.
Good.
See you, yes.
And I know you're obviously very involved in education. I want to ask you a little bit about the governor. She keeps discussing making the superintendent of education a gubernatorial appointment instead of an elected position. What are your thoughts on that? I know she brought that up again tonight. Did you have an opinion either way on what your thoughts on the superintendent position are?
Well, I think that's one of the few points that the governor and I disagree on. I think if we really want to impact public education in the state, we start with addressing a situation that has existed, such as Abbeville versus South Carolina. I think the governor has started us down the path on some very positive things. I just think that when it comes to the state superintendent of education being an appointee, that's not a high priority. I think the most important priority is to equalize the funding and ensure that students along the I-85 corridor and the I-95 corridor have a level playing field. And clearly that's not happening, and that's why we still have that lawsuit in front of us.
Gotcha. And so again, I keep hearing from all the Democrats that Abbeville is such a big priority this year, but we still don't hear too much from the governor. Are you hearing any from within the House itself? I mean, Speaker Lucas, other leaders inside the House, are they making this a priority this year, in your opinion?
Well, legislation, of course, this is only the second day of session. I can assure you that the House Democratic Caucus and the Legislative Black Caucus, of which I'm chair-elect, we're going to ensure, or we're going to make sure that we're very forceful about making sure that South Carolinians do not forget about Abbeville versus South Carolina. Right now, we have some disparities in this state in which rural children are not getting the same quality of education. The governor mentioned about a child being educated, educational level not being predicated upon where they live and the families that they're born to. Let's make that a reality. Yeah. Let's adhere to what the Supreme Court has said, put the funding there, and let's work together to make education a priority in South Carolina. And that's the message we want to carry forth with. We'll work with this governor, the future or the incoming governor, and we'll work with both the Republican and the Democratic caucus to make sure that happens.
Great. Very good seeing you, sir.
It's always good seeing you.
Have a good night. We got Senator John Scott here. Good to see you, sir.
Good to see you.
All right, sir. Tell me a little bit about your thoughts on the governor's final State of the State we heard this evening.
I think it was exactly what you said, a final. It was all a goodbye. She just kind of talked about some of the things that we as a state had accomplished, some of the things that she was able to accomplish and participate in. There was that thought again about appointing the superintendent of education, which was a brainchild of hers, of course. And when we look at the rural statistics across the country, it really just didn't work.
Yeah.
And the concern was early on, because it took that administration so long to get on board with public education, there was a lot of fears that we would end up having vouchers and other things that really affect the cost of public education. So that process did not work. I was hoping that we were able to talk a little bit about retirement and what we were going to do with retirement, but she was more interested in saying, well, these are some of the things we did, some of the shootings occurred in South Carolina, and hoping that South Carolina would heal, how many jobs that she was able to create during her tenure.
And then just looking forward, I should say, with Lieutenant Governor McMaster, you've obviously been in the Senate a long time. McMaster has served over the Senate. What are your thoughts on his, his priorities, perhaps, or maybe what you think he's going to make his priorities coming in?
I think because he's presided over the Senate, he's had the opportunity to spend those 2 years. He really understands where we need to go, and I think he'll have the relationships from the very beginning to really get some things going. I think what's important to be able to sit down and create some friends and some folk who will in fact support you on the other side of the aisle as well.
Gotcha.
I look forward to working with him.
Terrific. Good seeing you, sir.
Thank you, too.
Have a good night.
Thank you, Dan.
We got Representative Stephen Long. Come on. We'll talk. Freshman. Good to see you, sir. Tell me, this is your first State of the State here in the State House. What are your thoughts on hearing the governor's final State of the State?
Well, it's very exciting to be here. Usually State of the States have a lot of information about what they're going to be doing for the next year. This was, more of a farewell address than it was a State of the State to lay out an agenda of what she wants to accomplish.
Gotcha.
So, I enjoyed hearing her speech. I reckon it's the last time we'll hear from her. Looking forward to seeing what's going to happen with Governor McMaster.
Wonderful. And without having many really clear priorities laid out in that speech, where do you feel some of the priorities should be, even as a freshman with some fresh set of eyes coming in here? Where do you see those priorities?
Well, obviously,
going
we need to be looking at our roads. That was the biggest thing I heard when I was campaigning for office. It's the biggest thing I continue to hear is that we need to make sure that we're fixing our roads. We've also got the pension system. We've got $24 billion of unfunded liabilities we've got to take care of. And any host of other issues when it comes to stopping abortion, protecting gun rights, anything else like that. There's a number of issues facing our state.
Wonderful. Good seeing you, sir.
Good to see you. Thank you.
We got Representative Brandon Newton. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
The other 22-year-old in the State House,
That's
I should
right.
point out.
Yeah.
So tell me, again, another freshman representative, what are your thoughts on the governor's final state of state from what you heard?
Well, it was great to finally hear from the governor. It's sad losing her. She's a very popular governor. I think the people of South Carolina have given her high approval ratings for many years now. I think she's one of the most popular governors in the country. So it's sad to see her go. It was great to have a farewell from her. I hope the people of South Carolina got a nice farewell from the governor.
Wonderful. And I was asking Representative Long his thoughts on what the priorities should be going forward. Obviously, you guys are new to the House. What are your thoughts on what should be maybe the top priority?
Well, I think it's really three basic issues. It's always infrastructure, which are roads, your funding for your public and your university systems, and thirdly, government restructuring. That's what I ran on, and those are, in my opinion, the only three issues we really need to address.
Gotcha. Well, great talking to you.
Thank you so much.
You got Representative Wendell Joyard. Good. How are you doing, sir?
Doing fine.
Wonderful. Tell us your thoughts on the governor's speech. Obviously, you've heard several of these speeches before. What stood out to you tonight?
Well, definitely, my thoughts of it is the fact that she's an outgoing governor. She was somewhat mild on her issues. When you look at the state of South Carolina, we have a massive problems when it comes to our assisted living homes, and our nursing homes in the state of South Carolina. As you well know, we had a couple of tragedies last year pertaining to these healthcare homes. And, we have to make that priority one. The other thing that she did not include in her state of the state is the fact that here in the state of South Carolina, our school buses, we have a massive problem when it comes to our school buses. Now, I have a bill that I pre-filed for the moment that would add seatbelts to these school buses all over the state of South Carolina. But when I first got elected in 2008, I was a proponent of the state privatizing all the school buses. Because if we don't do that, we're going to have some serious issues with these buses as we transport our kids to and fro the schools. So we should not have to wait around until a tragedy. I said we need to act, and we need to act now. Now, the other thing that she was somewhat mild on, the fact that in my district, I have the Mother Emanuel Church. You know about the tragedy. And miles away, we had the Walter Scott situation. Well, gun reform. We have to have stricter gun laws for illegal guns in our community. It would be a step in the right direction. I pre-filed a bill that would take a bite out of crime in that area. So those are the things that I think we need to focus on. Lastly, the state employees, the shakers and the movers, the hard workers to make this state great. If you want it to be a great day in South Carolina, then let's give our state employees a 15% across the board wage increase. We need to either put up or shut up when it comes to our employees, with all due respect. But I wish her well, because I'm a statesman. Okay?
Good seeing you, sir. Have a great night.
Thank you.
We got Senator Margie Bright Matthews. Hello, Senator. Good. Tell us, what are your thoughts? Obviously, you've been here just a few years now. The thoughts on the governor's final state of the state here?
Well, quite honestly, there's not a lot for me to respond to because primarily the governor just said bye. It was nice being here, but I'm done. Farewell. And that's okay. I was looking for a little bit more by way of where do we go from here? What parting words can I provide the General Assembly in a bipartisan way on how we fix the roads, how we fix education, how we fix our medical system, but I didn't hear it.
Gotcha. And so then who will be directing these priorities? Is it going to be the new incoming Governor McMaster, or is this going to be a free-for-all this year? I mean, where are these priorities going to be developed at this point?
That is exactly my concern. I was hoping that the governor would come clean on the issue that, and last year when she did the State of the State address, she was saying the state was fine. However, 3 days later, in her hometown of Bamberg, their hospital closed. That meant that Barnwell, Bamberg, nor Allendale County, 3 contiguous counties, did not have a hospital. And that was because the state of South Carolina refused to allow Medicaid dollars. I was hoping that I would have heard something from her because she talked fondly about her hometown. I was hoping she would have reached back and done something to help those folks there. Those are the folks that I represent in the lower part of the state.
Gotcha. Well, wonderful seeing you.
Thank you.
Wonderful
Good
night.
seeing you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
And that was Senator Bright Matthews, and that was our last lawmaker who we spoke with this evening, concluding the coverage of Governor Nikki Haley's final State of the State address here in the State House of South Carolina in Columbia. I'm Gavin Jackson, and for South Carolina ETV and for South Carolina Public Radio, good night.